This is YGTV and YG One-on-One, sponsored by Right Now Media at Work, Flex Scripts, and C12. I'm your host, Paul M. Neuberger, CEO of the Young Guns Movement. Today, we go one-on-one at Serendipity Labs with Christine Specht, CEO of Cousin Subs. Let's go. This show, YG One-on-One, is quite simple, really. It's a long-form sit-down with a CEO, business leader, or luminary to learn how they got there and what they can teach us. Today, we welcome Christine Specht, CEO of Cousin Subs. Christine, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to get the most important question out of the way. I'm starving. Did you bring some Cousin Subs with you?
I didn't, but I know where you can get them. And I'll even give you a discount.
Oh, good. Well, you got to know people in high places. That's good. That's exciting. If you hear my stomach growl a little bit, I was anticipating some subs.
Oh, I apologize. I'll run out right now and get them.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll hold you to that one. So one of my first questions is, so Cousin Subs is a bit of an institution, especially here in southeastern Wisconsin. Now, I know when Cousin Subs was formed, there's a bit of an interesting backstory behind that. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how Cousins came to be?
Sure. Cousin Subs is a family business, and it was started by my dad and his cousin, so that's where we get the name from. It's one of the questions I'm most often asked when I'm out giving speeches and things. They want to know, why cousins? And I said, well, because they really are cousins. So my dad is from Atlantic City, and when he met my mom, who's from Milwaukee, this is where he laid down his roots, right? Because my mom was here and she wasn't moving to Atlantic City. At the same time, he missed his East Coast style sub sandwiches, particularly the ones that he would have in Atlantic City. So after a few stints in the printing industry, he decided to venture out with my mom's support and them having a young family. I wasn't born yet, but my brother was, and they just decided to open up their restaurant, but they recruited their cousin Jim to come into the business as well. So
did you kind of know from an early age that you would be in the family business, or did your interest in being associated with this organization kind of develop later in life?
It developed later in life, although it was my first job, so I couldn't wait to get started because I wanted to earn a little pocket money. And my first job was as a cashier at our Germantown location. It's still there today. And it was such a fun time. I loved it because I worked with my friends and we had just a great time. So it was just a great experience for somebody in high school, college. And I didn't really think that I would make this my professional career. My parents were gracious in that they allowed me to explore my own interests. They never said that, okay, you must do this job one day, you must work at Cousins. My brother did maintain employment at Cousins, so he stayed at the stores. He was a manager, and now he's a franchise owner. So him and his business partner have 5 restaurants, and so it's been a real interesting journey because my parents allowed me that freedom to. My parents just allowed me the freedom to explore my own interests. But then eventually, I decided to come back and work in their human resources department in 2001. So
when you came back in 2001 to work in the human resources department, what was it that got you to realize, I want to be a part of this? You know what? My parents have given me that flexibility, which is awesome. That's good advice for me to heed as a parent of young kids myself. But when did you know, I want to get back with Cousins and I want to make this my career?
Well, I think it was at that time because I've often said that when family businesses are are looking to transition to that second generation, I think that there's something to be said about if your parents force that and don't really give that second generation or the next generation the choice, and it just is an automatic assumption that we become part of that. They may want to do that, or they may reluctantly take over those, the running of that business, and I think that can be to the detriment of those businesses at times. So when I came back, they were just formed the Human Resources Department, and it was at that time I thought, well, I could really make this my career. My thought at the time was that I would make it my career within human resources. It still wasn't a foregone conclusion that I would eventually be running the company. That really, again, wasn't part of that discussion. But through just time and experience and a matter of circumstances and events that happened, it was the kind of the next path for me. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. So what's it like being a part of a family business? Speaking only for myself, I think as much as I love my family, if I was surrounded by my family on a regular basis, that might be a little trying at times. I know your family has done it, would seem quite seamlessly over the years. What's it like to be associated with a family-run organization?
Today, my dad still comes into the office. You know, he has a space. My mom encourages that. You know, I don't think she wants him at home all the time. And so, you know, besides him and then my brother, who I mentioned is a franchisee, I don't see him on a very regular basis because he's running and working the stores. My husband is in franchise sales. He's our director of franchise sales for Cousins. So I love that. I get to work with my spouse, and we don't work side by side every single day, but when we talk about business issues, when we talk about the company, we both have just a base of understanding of the brand and what's happening, so it makes for good, engaging conversations. So it's, you know, that and family businesses often are like this. It really becomes, it's such a blend. You know, you don't really turn it off at the end of the day when you go home from work. It's really a part of who you are, and it's just surrounds you, whether it's in talking with other people or talking amongst, you know, your family about the business. It's just really folded into your life, and I really couldn't imagine it any other way.
Mm-hmm. Well, being somebody who literally grew up with Cousin Subs, I'm sure you've got a lot of memories. I'm sure you've got a lot of interesting stories. To kind of put you on the spot here, what would you say was one of your favorite Cousins stories from growing up?
Oh man, I was just thinking about this today, as a matter of fact, because today I'm part of our menu development. So we are testing and trying new product. It's like an amazing perk of the job. So I have to eat, right, and try new products. And I just did that, and there was just a number of ingredients there at our corporate office, which also has a test kitchen where we can do this type of innovation and training and other things. But anyway, so there was stacks of meat there, and there was some cheese, and I peeled off a piece of provolone cheese, and I was eating it, and I was reminiscing about how when I was a little girl, I would go with my parents to the Germantown location, and I would always ask for cheese, right? And so whoever was sandwich making or whatever, they would give me some cheese, and it's such a silly thing, but it was just it was like such a memory that I had. It was like a flashback to being little and just, you know, having this business part of, you know, who I am, you know, for my entire life. So it's, I don't know. There's a lot of good memories, and certainly of especially as I was growing up.
Well, it's funny, like you said, how those little things can trigger those memories. A smell, a song, a piece of provolone cheese, and just how it just brings all that back.
Right.
Yeah. So you talk about your dad and your dad being retired now. What professionally speaking, what's your relationship with your dad look like? Do you still go to him for advice? Do you guys still converse on a regular basis about leadership, management? I mean, what does that relationship look like now that you're running the organization?
He was really, in a surprising way, really able to let go when he named me the president. And I think at that time, just prior to me, we had a president who was from the outside, so it wasn't homegrown within the organization. And after that relationship terminated and I became the president, I think that he was very glad to have somebody who knowing maybe doesn't have all the answers and didn't know everything about the business, but he could have somebody he trusted and could influence probably. But at the same time, he became hands-off because I think he felt he didn't have to micromanage. Fast forward all these years now, he is somebody who still is very engaged, and he still visits the stores. He still has regular and daily access to members of my leadership team or anybody else in our corporate support center. And he is somebody who will certainly tell me what's on his mind when he sees something going well, or maybe when something's not going well. And then it's up to me to kind of fix that or explain why something is changing or why things are different. But we have a good relationship, and we do talk on a regular basis. And it's, I think sometimes he might look at me like I'm still like in my 20s, I'm not in my 20s anymore.
As parents typically do from time to
I
time.
know. But you know, I give him a lot of credit because I think about him and my parents, and they started this business, and you know, to really be able to let go and let somebody else take control, it's got to be a very difficult thing, even if it is a family member. And my dad has been able to do that really well. And I think it's because he knows he still has access. We're not caught up in hierarchy, you know. And in fact, I often tell him to go talk to, you know, my VP of finance, or, you know, go talk to the president, because I'm only the CEO now, I'm not the president. So, you know, sometimes I don't know all the minutia that my dad loves to know.
Mm-hmm. But what a blessing it must be, though, to have somebody like that in your corner, outside of just a loving, supportive father, somebody who is entrepreneurial minded, somebody who understands business, somebody who's had a lot of success. To have somebody like that in your corner, that has to only have enhanced your professional development over the years, right?
It has, and you bring up a very good point, because I would say that my dad is very entrepreneurial, so he had this entrepreneurial spirit, right? So he was kind of not very enamored with the business that he was working in, the printing industry. It's a fine business, it just wasn't for him. And yet he, at the same time, wanted to start his own thing. So, and he missed these sub sandwiches. So, you know, those are those real entrepreneurs where they take the risk, right? My parents didn't have a lot of money. You know, they had what they put into the business what they had. They partnered with somebody. They bought used restaurant equipment. You know, the location was based on the fact that that location was a former restaurant and available. You know, and kind of the rest is history. So it's that those entrepreneurial qualities about my dad still exist today, and you can see that in how he asks me particular questions about, you know, the brand.
Well, and that's something that you should certainly be commended for, because from the outside looking in, the Cousins brand is very, very strong. It's got a very stellar name reputation, and obviously as one of the influential individuals around that, you deserve a lot of credit. You had talked about how the brand was a little tired and was a little old. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means and what specifically you and your team did to rejuvenate that brand and inject the life into it that you currently have?
One of the hurdles to get over was the fact that, you know, the business, it was an ongoing business. It was profitable. It was doing well. Yet at the same time, it was getting tired, and the decor was dated, and there wasn't a lot of consistency from store to store. And at the same time, we're a franchise business, so we have our 28 corporately owned restaurants, right? But then we have 70 franchised restaurants. So you have a number of franchise owners, around 30 of them, who also have an interest in their own business, but doing business as Cousins Subs. So there were a lot of hurdles to get over to say, hey, we should spend a bunch of money to remodel our restaurants. We should ask our franchise owners to spend a bunch of money to remodel their restaurants so that we can have a consistent brand image and a brand appeal to our consumers. And it wasn't just about the remodel, but that certainly is one of the biggest components. But it was really about redoing the brand marketing, and then at the same time making sure that we have the best people, or the right people in the right seats on the bus, so to speak. So there was a lot of heavy lifting that happened. But like I said, most notably was with the environmental changes that we made. And like, for example, you know, and a lot of times what we're doing is taking stores from maybe an inline strip center and relocating them where we can to a freestanding restaurant with a drive. You know, it allows greater accessibility for consumers. It's just one more avenue for them to get their product. And again, talking through the branding, talking about what is important to us, what our values are, what do we stand for, what's important to us, what will guests see when they walk into our restaurants, what will they understand that it's a little bit more than just a sub sandwich. There's a deeper connection to the community. It was about, and you know, talking about the fact that we have a foundation and that we're invested in our communities. It just all of these things that were they were part of the foundation of the brand, but they just needed some cleaning up and some freshening up. So the investments were made by our franchise community. They're incredible. So as they were signing on to a new franchise agreement, they are committed, because we're not there yet, but they are committed to remodeling the restaurants. We're just over half of our restaurants are remodeled. Corporately, we're investing in our brand, remodeling our restaurants.
Now we're just getting started. Let's take a quick break and come back for more with Christine Specht, CEO of Cousins Subs. This episode of YG One-on-One on YGTV is brought to you by FlexScripts, Right Now Media at Work, and C12.
Welcome to Right Now Media at Work, an on-demand library of video resources used by Christian business leaders to care for employees, inspire leaders, and cultivate a healthy team. Serve your employees with over 20,000 videos on topics like professional development, mental health, and leadership from leaders like Patrick Lencioni, Henry Cloud, and John Maxwell, plus marriage, parenting, and personal finance content. Help your employees become better at home and better at work. Schedule a free demo today to get an in-depth tour of Right Now Media at Work.
If you're a CEO, listen up. Odds are you're paying too much for your employee benefit pharmacy spend. How do I know? I work with FlexScripts. They're the PBM police, delivering their average client 15 to 20% savings on their pharmacy benefits. Think how much money that is. FlexScripts makes sure your PBM keeps their promises and meets your guarantees. And if they don't, FlexScripts holds them accountable and gets you what you deserve. Stop paying too much for your pharmacy benefits and get FlexScripts, the PBM police, on your side. Start the conversation today at flexscripts.com. That's flexscripts.com. At YGTV, we talk about being a strong leader, being focused and pushing the envelope. Many of you are hard chargers, but truth be told, we all can use a sounding board and some accountability along the way. Through a peer group format, the C12 group gathers a dedicated group of leaders who want bigger, better businesses and share your Christian values. The C12 group is the largest and fastest growing faith-based business peer advisory group in the entire world, and they're now expanding to the Milwaukee area. If you are a CEO or business owner and want to find out if you qualify for one of these groups, contact my good friend Chris Wise at 920-969-8070 or go to c12group.com. The letter C, 12group.com. The C12 Group, building great businesses for a greater purpose. So among all the things that I do, I'm also a public speaker and a sales trainer. And one of my favorite things to talk about is differentiation. I'm obsessed with differentiation. We might need an entirely different episode on that, so hopefully you'll come back and engage me with that. But when I talk about the product that you provide and the food choices that you offer, it just seems like there's a ton of competition in your space. It seems like there's sandwich shops all over the place. There's sub joints all over the place. Describe to me the Cousins differentiator. What is it about Cousins? What can you get at Cousins that you can't get at any of these other organizations?
Well, on the product side, we would say that we have an indulgent menu because it is a wonderfully indulgent and delicious menu. So what does that mean? Well, we have flat top grills in our locations, which means you can get steaks and chicken cheese steaks in the Philly way, out off the grill like that. But we don't stop there. We have deep fried cheese curds, and for people who aren't from Wisconsin, they're a little hesitant until they try them and they realize they are just food of the gods, really. I mean, it's just, they're so good.
No argument for me.
So good. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we're told a lot, and it is true, that we have French fries, and it seems like such a silly thing, but a lot of the sub shops do not carry fries. So, that's again a differentiator. We just launched chocolate and vanilla shakes.
Christine, you're killing me. I'm starving.
Well, and I work, and I often work in our restaurants. It's one of the things I love to do as CEO. I go in there and one of the best things about it is that, I have to do quality control. So I always have to test the shake machine to make sure that it's the right consistency, and I'm never disappointed. They're so amazing.
Well, I know you put an emphasis on corporate culture. I know that's important to you personally. I know that's important to your family. For individuals that might not see the inner sanctum of Cousins, can you describe the corporate culture at Cousins for us?
For me to be able to truly live our values, it's really about not only doing that while I'm at the support center, but making sure that it's happening in the restaurants as well. And it's easier said than done. We're not a perfect organization, but we do try to be engaging and warm and welcoming. We love to have fun. We want to, and I totally believe you need to enjoy your work. You spend the best hours of your life at your job. Doesn't mean every day is going to be great, but overall you need to think that was a good choice I made to work there. And you know, we embrace that. We embrace ideas that people have and that they want to bring forward, because it's recognizing that the entire business doesn't rest on one person. It's about this kind of group of people coming together. So we do our best, and we can always do better, which is, you know, why our mission is we believe in better through the continual improvement in everything we do. It's about what can you do better today than you did yesterday, and what are you going to do tomorrow that's better.
Well, and I was excited to have you on the program for a number of reasons, not the least of which is to have you discuss, to some degree, the franchise opportunities at Cousins, because one of the things that we're passionate about at YGTV, which is why you're on the program, is entrepreneurship. And we want to be thought leaders in this regard. We want to give them access to individuals that are in the arena, that are changing lives, that are making the world a better place. And for our viewership, many of them are entrepreneurial minded. Many of them are like your father. I'm doing this to make a living, but I'm not really making a life doing this. There's got to be something better for me. Why should some of these entrepreneurial-minded, business-savvy individuals consider buying in, at least on the franchise opportunity for Cousins? Why would that be a good move for some people?
Well, franchising is really an interesting structure, because it allows people to fulfill an entrepreneurial drive that they may have, but they don't have to reinvent the wheel. I would suggest that if you're looking to be in the restaurant business, specifically selling sub sandwiches, you probably want to buy a franchise versus starting your own, just because it is so competitive. Why would you buy Cousins over anybody else? Well, you know, I haven't worked in those other concepts before, but what I can tell you is that when people visit us, when franchise candidates visit us, they get to know our teams, they really, they give us unsolicited feedback and say things such as, you know, you guys are some of the hardest working corporate support people we know. You're really there to think about how to help the franchisee be more successful. A lot of times what can happen in a franchisor-franchisee relationship, the franchisor really thinks about the franchisee as just a revenue stream, and they'll make decisions based on the fact that they're a revenue stream. And while that is true, that's why, you know, franchisors franchise is so they can increase their revenue. But we're only successful if our franchise community is successful. And sometimes that even means making the difficult decisions to part ways with franchisees who aren't successful. When we did our rebranding efforts, and even before we started that, we probably had over 90 franchise groups, and today we have about 30. And what that means is we've said goodbye to many franchise operators who maybe weren't a fit for the system, or maybe their stores weren't performing, or they were unhappy, or they exited the system and their stores then were either closed or sold to another franchise owner or sold to corporate. And so it's really about aligning yourself and finding franchise candidates who can share your values and realize that it can be it's very hard work to be a franchisee. There's no doubt about it. I have the luxury of having the different departments, right? So I get to do what I do. But as a franchisee, you're running your business, but you're also marketing your business. And at the end of the long day in the restaurants, you're doing the paperwork on the accounting end of it. I mean, there is all of that small business ownership that comes with being a franchisee. So I have a lot of regard for them. And truly, we try to make the decisions that we make at corporate, we try to keep our franchisees top of mind to make sure that it's good for them as well for corporate.
Sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of good stuff going on within your organization. We've talked about that, from the success to the growth to the rebranding and all these fresh new initiatives. There's got to be a couple of things from your perspective that maybe are challenges, maybe are struggles, maybe are hurdles or obstacles for an organization like Cousins to overcome. What are some of the challenges that you're currently facing right now as an organization, and what are you starting to do to tackle and alleviate those challenges?
Some of the challenges I would say would be growth outside of our core market. You know, we believe we have a product and we believe we have talent that can be replicated in new markets, and we have franchise owners in the Chicagoland area, and we want to build on their successes. So, but we recognize that it is a very competitive landscape, and that as as much as competitors have a hard time coming into this market successfully because we have such a stronghold, we recognize that we're on the other side of that when we go into new markets. And so how will we market ourselves? How will we position ourselves? How will we invest in those markets to continue growth? Because I believe that our brand would be successful and can be successful in many more markets. And that is through contiguous growth. That's by growth that makes sense. It's not just, having a splat map and growing wherever somebody has a couple of dollars to invest. We really want to do it right because we want to do it for the long term, not just for the immediate satisfaction of saying, hey, we opened up this number of stores this year, or we received this much in franchise fees. It's really about, are we continuing to strengthen the brand and grow the brand that we know will find success for the next 10 years. So that challenge is always there because you have to have the people that are well capitalized. You have to have people that share your vision. You have to have people that understand the restaurant industry, or you have to have the capital to do it yourself as a corporate entity, which we could, but at the time, we have right now what we're going through is we have a lot of franchisees that are looking at retirement. And we have purchased and have recently bought back a number of locations from franchisees that say, I'm ready to retire, I'm ready to move on to my next phase. They're a viable ongoing business, and we have purchased those stores back. So for us, it's a challenge of where to spend your capital. There's an endless list of how to spend capital. But so for us, it's where do you buy new locations? Do you remodel? Do you venture into new markets? But that's where that franchising model can really be successful because they can help you accelerate growth in new markets.
What would you say is one thing about Cousin Subs that not a lot of people know? Either about your history, about your organization, about your products. What is one or two little tidbits of information that not a lot of people know about your organization?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that we do bake our bread fresh in store, 1 to 2 times a day. So it's legit, right? The bread is the hallmark of our brand. And that was something that my dad was really passionate about when he started Cousins. That he wanted to make sure that bread was reminiscent of what he knew in Atlantic City. But beyond that, for years, Bill and Jim reinvested in the community through charitable organizations and work that they did. They had a foundation, but they never talked about it. And what's interesting is, that whole mindset about that your consumers are demanding, your businesses to be something more than just of themselves. And so we recognize that. So we formalized our Make It Better Foundation, which focuses on youth education, hunger, and health and wellness. So those are our pillars. And we're able to give donations to these organizations, and they're small donations, but they can have a world of impact on some of these organizations that are deep in our communities, and where we are also our individual franchise owners and our individual stores also support the communities around them. And I think that there's a real tie in there that people want to know when they come to Cousins, it's more than just a sub. They, through them purchasing this sub, that helps us to fund our foundation, which helps us to change communities, change lives. We have a scholarship program for our team members. We have a scholarship program, the Wisconsin Sports Awards, that we just wrapped up this year for students who are going to college. And there's a lot of good that happens through a sub sandwich.
Mm-hmm. More than you might realize, it sounds like. So although you've been with Cousin Subs pretty much your entire life, or at least been involved with it, you've been in the C-suite since, I believe, approximately May 2008 when you were named president. You have been CEO less than 2 years, so you're still relatively new in the CEO-only title. What I really like about this program is it features executive leaders for executive leaders. That's the majority of who our audience is. So as you transitioned into the role of CEO, what advice would you have for any individual who's transitioning into a new C-suite executive capacity? What have you learned? What information have you walked away with? So for someone watching this who's new into the C-suite, what advice would you give them to make that a very successful transition?
So it's really about understanding your role and where you can be most impactful. And so, for example, the CEO and the president roles are very different. I am, as a CEO, more visionary, more public-facing, more culture-driven, more people-focused. My president, Jason Westhoff, he's very much systems and processes and management and accountability and all those things that are so necessary when you're trying to scale a brand. And he's really good at that, and I'm not that great at that. I can do that because I did it, but when you're trying to take a company from here and you want it to go to here, you really have to have those honest conversations with yourself to say, who's the best person to do that? It may not be you as the CEO. And I have the luxury of having a leadership team where I've often said they're all better than me in their respective roles. I'm not an expert in marketing. Thank goodness I've got my VP of marketing who's really good at his job. You know, and it's really about finding people who are going to be so good at their jobs. I don't have to worry about, I don't have to worry about marketing, or I don't have to worry about the development piece because I've got pros that are doing that. So I would say as a CEO or as the leader of the organization, whether it's president, whatever your title is, it's really about understanding what are you good at, and then how can you understand what you're not good at and fill those gaps to get the best people that you can afford. It will be so liberating in a sense. I wasn't sure about kind of letting go of all the control. I don't manage the leadership team anymore. I manage 2 people, my wonderful administrative assistant and my president. And I used to manage more people. And I was wondering about how I would give up that control, if that would be something I could live with. But oh my gosh, it's been wonderful because I'm doing the work that is most impactful to the organization. And I wasn't doing that work when I was staring at spreadsheets. And I also didn't enjoy that work, staring at spreadsheets.
Well, it looks like you enjoy your role now for sure, so it looks
I
like
love
that
it.
was a good move. I did a post on social media recently once Elon Musk's organization SpaceX had that successful shuttle launch, and I think when it comes to entrepreneur and business success, I think a lot of people look at it kind of like that iceberg theory, where they only see that tiny amount of the iceberg above the water. And usually that's the success, the glamour, the money, the prestige, everything else. What people don't see is the 98% of the iceberg underwater, the sleepless nights, the risk, the hard work. What a lot of people don't know is with SpaceX, they had 7 or 8 shuttle failures, including one that blew up with $50 million of Facebook satellites on it. Imagine going back to Mark Zuckerberg. Oops, sorry about that. So I think you're where you are, outside of the fact that you're talented, you're hard working, you're driven. I think part of the reason you are where you are is you haven't given up. You faced adversity in your life, obviously. You faced challenges in your life, but you kept going. How have you been able to handle adversity and keep plowing forward when maybe from time to time there's that voice to say, I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I'm good enough. How have you been able to keep going forward despite the adversities you faced?
That's a great question. I would say that it's really about trying to do the right thing, and I think that when you behave ethically, when you're not without mistakes, and you're certainly not perfect, but when you have the right intentions and you behave in the right way, I sleep at night knowing that while the company will have its ebbs and flows of challenges, setbacks, and growths and successes, that we are on the right path, and I feel really good about that. Besides that, personally for me, it's my faith in God. It's a fantastic family structure. My husband is wonderfully supportive. I have 2 little kiddos that they love eating subs, so and they'll give me their feedback all the time. They love cousins, so I think it's about having an outlet that is available for discernment and to bounce ideas off of, and I'm parts of other leadership groups and organizations, roundtables, so on, that can just give you some objectivity, because when you're in the weeds and things are looking really tough, it's difficult to kind of see through that, but people can give you the objectivity you need. And that's been very helpful.
Yeah. What do you do for professional growth and professional development? I mean, what works for you? You see people that read a lot. You see people that go to seminars, people that join groups of their peers, and whatever the case may be. What do you do for professional development, and how has that worked for you?
I have worked with executive coaches. One thing that I do all the time is I try to be very mindful of my emotional intelligence and how I'm communicating with others. And we talk about that, like say, for example, at work we use DISC. We have the DISC profiles. So, and there's many behavioral kind of assessments you can give, and we do DISC. And so for me, so many issues and challenges that come about is really about personality conflicts or communication challenges, right? And so what I do is I try to stay mindful of what is my style versus what is somebody else's style, and how am I best going to communicate my message. Having this mindset, though, that you should always be in this state of wanting to do better.
Sure. Well, my final question for you, hard to believe we're at that time. This has been extremely enjoyable. Time does fly when you have fun, after all. Speaking of time, you'll probably be the first to say your time in executive leadership with Cousin Subs has probably gone fairly quickly. Probably hard to believe for you to think that you've actually been serving in the capacity that you have as long as you have. So you're not going to be there forever. Hopefully you're there for a long time, because you're doing a great job and we don't want to lose you anytime soon. But what do you want your legacy to be when it's time for you to leave the organization, when it's time for you to go on to that next big adventure? What is Christine's legacy going to be, if you could draw that chapter up for us?
Right, and I'm not there yet. I'm not quite ready to retire. However, when I think about my legacy, it's kind of individual, and then it's community, right? So individually, I want to say that I want people who currently work for the organization or our franchise operators, our franchise owners, my goal for them is to say that they can say at the end of the day, this was a good investment. Franchisees are happy they made the investment into Cousins, or individuals found success through Cousins, through working at Cousins. I want them to be proud of where they worked for those years, and that somehow it's had an influence. And even if they don't make a career out of it, I can't tell you how many times I've met people who are not at all affiliated with the restaurant industry, and they say that their first job was at Cousins. And it's really how they're able to tell me a story about their emotional connection to the brand and why that mattered, and then how that has influenced their future decisions. And I think back, and again, not everybody's going to work for my brand, and not everybody's going to have a long career, but they will. I want them to look back and think, time well spent. And then from really a collective perspective, I would say that I want Cousins to be viewed as a good community neighbor. And I think the word community is sometimes overused, but it really does make sense here. We are part of these different communities. They're very, very diverse. And I want us, and the citizens, more importantly, to think they're good. They sponsored so-and-so's Little League. They helped out at that food pantry. And I want us to have Cousins to have that legacy, that more than just a sub. But it's through this sub sandwich, such a simple thing, that you can transform communities or organizations or individuals' lives.
Well, as I said, I had high expectations for this interview. You've exceeded all of them. I've learned a lot. I know our audience did as well. Okay, well, Christine Specht, CEO of Cousin Subs, thank you so much for being on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to Christine for sitting down with me on YG One-on-One, which is sponsored by FlexScripts, Right Now Media at Work, and C12. We want to feature the CEOs and executives that inspire you, our valued viewer. Let us know who you'd like to see by connecting with us on our website or social media. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode of YGTV. I'm your host, Paul M. Neuberger, CEO of the Young Guns Movement. We'll see you next time.